Let's take a look at selection in C#. Now everything that we've done to date has taken your code starting in your main method and run sequentially from top to bottom. Obviously you might have calls to other methods, like change console colors is going to exit out of this main method temporarily, run these 3 lines of code, and then come back here and continue running. This terminate program method will run running these 3 lines of code and then going back to the main method where the program terminates. And so that's sequence. That's your code running from top to bottom. And selection is kind of a way of changing that. And we do selection in C# with if statements. So I want to show you my starting file. I already told you I'm changing my console colors and terminating program. So when I run this, that is the extent of what we're getting. Not very exciting. So let's put some code in here. So for my shipping cost example, I'm going to declare a new Boolean variable. A Boolean variable holds a value of true or false, and I'm going to call this variable is oversized and initialize that to false. And so this is, is the item that we're shipping oversized or not? And I also want to declare a double variable for shipping cost, and that's going to hold how much it costs to ship. And so now we want to do our first if statement. So the syntax for creating an if statement in Visual Studio is the keyword if. Notice that gets put in blue, followed by a set of opening parentheses, and then in here goes your conditional statement. This is the test that the compiler is going to run and determine, does this test return true or does this test return false? The test I want to run is a simple one. I want to test is oversized, is that equal to true? Now notice that up here I used a single equal sign. A single equal sign is the assignment operator. And what the assignment operator does is it says whatever is on the right side of the equal sign, set that equal to whatever is on the left of the equal sign. So take the value false and put that into is oversized. 2 equal signs is something completely different in Visual Studio. This is a comparison operator. And what this is doing is it's looking at whatever is on the left of these 2 equal signs and whatever is on the right of those 2 equal signs. If those 2 are the same value, then this whole conditional statement returns true. So since I set the value of is oversized to false, false does not equal true, therefore this conditional statement will return false. So that's the conditional statement. And now, next thing we want to put in here is an opening and closing set of curly braces. Inside of the first opening and closing set of curly braces after my if statement is going to be the code that I want to run if this conditional statement returns true. So if is oversized is in fact equal to true, I want to set my shipping cost equal to $100 because it's more expensive to ship an oversized item, so we're going to charge our customers $100 for shipping an oversized item. And then, but what if the item is not oversized? So it's a normal sized item. Well, that's where we can now use this other keyword else. And else is where we're going to put basically whatever code will run if this conditional statement returns false. Correct, if this conditional statement returns false. And so in here, since it's not oversized, it's regular sized, and therefore I want to set my shipping cost equal to 50. It's cheaper to ship out non-oversized items. That's why we have a discrepancy there. And then below that, just to test this out, I want to display in the console to the user how much their shipping cost is. And so we could put your shipping cost is, and we'll put a token in here followed by a :C, so that the token's going to display as a currency value with a $sign in there. And then what do I want to put in that token? I want to put the shipping cost. And so before we run this, I should expect to see your shipping cost is $50. Why? Because I set is oversized equal to false. So let's run that your shipping cost is $50. Great, that's what I expected. But what if we set is oversized equal to true? So the item we're shipping is in fact oversized. Then this conditional statement is basically going to be testing is true equal to true, and yes, true is equal to true. Therefore, run whatever in the first set of curly braces, and that's going to set my shipping cost equal to $100. This else clause will not run. Basically, when this line of code runs and we hit this closing curly brace, we're skipping everything else and going back down here to this line of code. So the compiler is not going to hit this line of code. So let's run this and verify that now our shipping cost is $100 with our oversized item. There it is. Shipping cost of $100 like we expect. One thing I want to mention about syntax here is that notice that my if statement and this else statement do not end with a semicolon. There are a few exceptions to the rule that every line of code in C# should end in a semicolon. The beginnings of your if statements and your else clauses should not end in a semicolon. One quick test is if the following line of code starts with an opening curly brace, then that means that the line above it should not have a semicolon at the end. Similarly, method headings do not have a semicolon at the end because the next line is an opening curly brace. The beginning of your class definitions do not end in a semicolon because the next line starts with a curly brace. The beginning of your namespace definitions do not end in a semicolon because we have an opening curly brace also. I call our next example here the stoplight example. And so before we were working with a Boolean variable that we were using our if statement, conditional statement with. This time I'm going to use a string. So first I'm going to ask the user what color the light is. And so let's do console.write, and we're going to get user input here. So we need to first prompt them. What color is the light? And in the next line we'll create a new string variable called light color and set that equal to whatever the user types into the console. Oops, console.read line. Okay, so we're prompting the user what color is the light and then storing their response into a variable called light color, hoping that the user will type in red, yellow, or green. And so what can we do with those responses? So I want another set of if statements here, and I'll use that same syntax here, if, and then my conditional test inside of parentheses. So if the light color equals red, then what should I do? I want to print to the console and tell the user to stop. And then before, up here, we did if and then else. And there's a new syntax I want to show you here called else if. So that's basically saying if this test is false, then do another test. And that second test I want to run, another test I want to run is if the light color equals yellow. That should be in quotes because that's a string. So here's my conditional test, no semicolon. And if the light is yellow, I want to tell the user to, oops, and sorry, I only used one equal sign, should have used two for the comparison operator. And I want to tell the user to slow down or speed up based on where they are in the intersection. And then we can do another else if to test if the light color is green. And if it's green, we'll say go. Okay, so now let's run this program. What color is the light? Let's say that the light is red. When I type in red, that's going to get stored into the variable, and we'll see which line of my code gets run. The line of code that puts stop on the console, which makes sense because this is the conditional test came out to be true, And so this line of code ran. Now let's run the same code and tell the program that the light is yellow. If that's the case, we get printed slow down or speed up. That makes sense because now this conditional statement here is resulting in true. And finally, I'll show you what we do if we put green. Green is go. That looks good. So some of you might be thinking, well, what if they type in something that isn't red, yellow, or green? And we can take care of that in an else statement. Remember, the else statement is if none of these conditional tests turn out to be true, then whatever is here in the else clause is going to run. So here we could just say, I don't recognize that input. Something like that. And so now if they type in something like Louis Lumberjack, I don't recognize that input. So none of those conditional tests above were returning true. Neither this one, nor this one, nor this one. And so the else clause gets run. Okay, let's look at one more example here. Grades example. So this one I'm going to work with numbers. I'm going to work with integers actually. So up here I was working with a Boolean variable that I was testing in my conditional statements. Down here in my stoplight example I was working with strings, and so I was using strings in these conditional statements. And then finally with grades I'll be doing an integer. So let's declare a new integer variable called grade. And I'll declare a new string variable called grade letter. And what this if statement is going to do is determine if the student gets an A, B, C, D, or F based on their numeric percentage grade. So let's again prompt the user and ask them what their grade is. What is your numeric grade? And then we'll take their response and store it into our grade variable. Oops, and I need to first convert that input to an integer. Okay, prompting the user here for their numeric grade. And then this line of code is taking whatever gets typed into the console and then converting that to an integer and then storing that into our grade variable, which we declared up here. Simple. So now we're ready for our if statement. And a neat code snippet to save you some time typing. If you type the word if followed by the tab key twice, it puts in the proper syntax for you. And notice that this conditional test is highlighted, so I can start typing and immediately overwrite that. And so the first test I want to run is if the grade is greater than or equal to 90. So obviously you know if a grade is greater than or equal to 90, what letter grade do we have? We have an A. And so I'm going to set my grade letter equal to A down here. Finish that off with a semicolon. And let's do an else if here. So if this first conditional test is not true, then I'm going to test for my B's. And I'm going to test for my B's by seeing if grade is greater than or equal to 80. And if grade is greater than or equal to 80, I want to set grade letter equal to B. I'm going to copy and paste this 3 more times for my C's, D's, and F's. So if it's greater than or equal to 70, I want a C. If it's greater than or equal to a 60, set my grade letter equal to D. And actually, let's just change this to an else statement. Because if none of these other statements are true, obviously they have an F in the class. So let's set grade letter equal to F. And then below this, we can display on the console what the user's grade is. So this token 0, is being replaced with grade letter. Grade letter is this variable we declared up here, and then set equal to A, B, C, D, or F based on whatever the user typed in. So let's give this now a run. And first let's comment out our middle example here, the stoplight example. We don't need that anymore, so if I select all these lines of code and click this button in the toolbar, comment out the selected lines, that will put a double slash at the beginning of each of those lines, so those lines of code will not run. I also don't want to run my shipping cost example anymore, so I can comment those out. So the only code that's going to run is this that I have selected. So let's run that, and say our first student has a 78. Enter. That says you earned a C in the class. And actually I want this 78 to be typed in on the line above here. So I should not have done a console.write line here. Let's do a console.write, and that will keep the cursor on this same line. It won't do a carriage return at the end of the statement. Let's run this again. What is your numeric grade? Let's say for this student it's a 62, and there's the D in the class. And then a high-performing student with a 98, they earned an A. And notice this will even account for students who have maybe done some extra credit, if that's available, who have 102% in the class right now, and that would also result in an A. And then anything that doesn't fit into those top categories, say a score of 30, that will result in an F.